In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Maryland gubernatorial election for 2018. I'm going to be taking a look at some historical data and then some positive numbers for the Democrats, some positive numbers for the Republicans, and then at the end giving my final prediction on how I see this particular gubernatorial race going in the midterm elections coming up here in November. So to start off here, looking back at what happened in the last gubernatorial election, which was in 2014, neither of the candidates were incumbent. There had been a Democratic governor prior. He was term limited, that of course being Governor Martin O'Malley. Many people probably remember him running in 2016 in the Democratic primary for president, coming up well short behind Clinton and Bernie Sanders. So we had two new challengers coming in. Larry Hogan able to eke it out at the end of the day over Anthony Brown. It was a very competitive election, but Hogan winning with 51% of the vote and Brown had 47.2% of the vote. And Maryland, it's obviously a very lean blue state, but for whatever reason, there's a lot of these states, specifically over on the East Coast and in the Northeast, where they're extremely blue Democratic, but a lot of them have Republican governors, and Maryland is no exception in that situation. So I want to take a look at the congressional map just to show you how blue Maryland is. They have 8 congressional districts, and every single one of them is solid Democrat, expecting to get between about 60 to 80% of the vote in these districts. And then they have one district that's solid Republican. So you can see here 7 out of the 8 districts are very Democratic. So you'd say, how does a Republican have any shot at winning a statewide election? Well, Larry Hogan proved that he could do it in 2014, and he's looking pretty good to possibly do that again in 2018. But another good piece of data here for the Democrats is the primary vote, where the Republicans and Larry Hogan on the governor's side, they're the incumbent, getting about 210,000 votes. And then on the Democrat side, if you add up all of their candidates together, of course, Ben Jealous going on and getting the most votes at 231,000, which is 21,000 more than Hogan got. But if you add up all the votes, you get almost up to about 600,000 votes. It splits the difference between about 500,000 and 600,000. So really strong turnout there. But again, not a huge surprise when you talk about how deeply blue a state like Maryland is. For them having way more turnout, especially in a competitive primary for the governorship, not a big surprise. And I don't think Larry Hogan should be too worried about this situation. It's one thing to lose badly on primary day, especially when you don't have any challenger going against you. It's a different thing to lose on the general election day. So now moving on to some numbers that are really looking positive for Larry Hogan and the Republicans. So we look at the polls and just going over recent polling data. The one that came out most recently had Hogan ahead by 20 points. Looking back at some of these other polls here, we have Hogan ahead by 15, ahead by 22, ahead by 16 points, ahead by 9 points. So all the polls over the past couple of months have been very positive for Hogan. And to wrap things up, the last piece of evidence here that it's looking really strong for the Republicans in Larry Hogan, the incumbent. When you look at the top 10 most approved of governors, Larry Hogan ranks number 2 out of the 50 governors across all of the states in the U.S. So he's at 68% approval, just 17% disapproval. That's tough for any challenger to overcome, even in a deeply blue state like Maryland. Ben Jealous, he has a huge hill to climb up going against a popular incumbent, and that's part of the reason why he's down so much in the polling average number here that we have across all of those polls. So the best case scenario for Jealous in the Democrats is the fact that he's not just an establishment Democrat. He has an affirmative, progressive message. Maybe that gets a lot of Democratic voters in Maryland excited to come out and support him. Also, in terms of those congressional races, like I said, 7 out of the 8 districts in Maryland are expected to be safe Democratic seats, and there could be a trickle-up effect. Usually you hear about a trickle-down effect, particularly it happens in presidential elections. If the Democrats have a strong candidate on the ticket, like an Obama, for instance, in 2008 and 2012, where a lot of people turned up and voted for him that might not turn out to an election otherwise, and that can have a down ballot positive effect on other Democrats running. Well, in this sense, there's a lot of Democratic enthusiasm. They're going to come out and vote in these congressional races, and maybe those Democratic voters will have their vote come and help up a candidate on the Democrat side in that governor's race. I expect this to be a little bit closer than what these polls are indicating, especially in a year where we're going to get strong Democratic turnout. There's a lot more enthusiasm on the Democrat side. We've seen that in the primary vote turnout, certainly as an indicator of that. Also, just in terms of fundraising, there's been way more enthusiasm on the Democrat side as well, which is tangible numbers that are looking very positive for the Democrats. So with all that being the case, I'd be surprised if Hogan completely ran away with this one. It's obviously an uphill battle for Jealous, but at the end of the day, I see Hogan winning this one, maybe right around a 10 percentage point mark. We'll see how that plays out in what should be a relatively interesting race here in the state of Maryland. So that's going to wrap up this video, guys. Thanks for stopping on in. If you enjoy this kind of content, I encourage you to click that subscribe button, and I hope to see you back here for future videos.